What's going on, guys? Ben here with Strong Insurance. Today we are going to discuss growing a fleet and the three most important things to keep in mind as you start to hockey stick up in your fleet size from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks up to 15, 20, 40 trucks. And this all applies from one truck to five trucks, 5 to 10, 10 to 50. It doesn't matter. In any case, all of these three things still apply. So the first thing we're going to cover is financials. The second thing we're going to cover is safety and compliance. And of course, the third piece of the puzzle is the insurance. These are three things that you really want to make sure you have in place before you start to grow a fleet from any size to any size. So we'll start with the financials. Obviously, it's very important to make sure you have your financial ducks in a row. You want to make sure that you're not going backwards, right? We see this all the time. We see people that are currently operating profitably at 3 trucks and they're saying, oh, I'm going to go to 7 trucks by the end of this next year. And they get up to 7 trucks and they didn't have all of the other components in place. And now they're not a profitable operation when they were at 3 trucks. So one of the most important things you can know is your cost per mile. If you don't know a breakdown of exactly what each of your trucks cost per mile in order to operate, from driver pay to fuel costs to parking costs to insurance to IFTA taxes, I mean, you name it, that you've got to know an exact breakdown of rate per mile in order to adequately go out and bid on these loads, whether it be on a load board or direct with a shipper. However you're booking your loads, you need to make sure that your operating costs are obviously lower than what you're charging. So if you're not sure what your operating costs are and your cost per mile, feel free, down below this video, we have a rate per mile calculator. It's free to use. We're not going to collect your information. Go use that rate per mile calculator, put your trucks in there, get a breakdown, and know exactly where you need to be operating in order to be profitable. The other thing is, try not to go into heaps of debt when you start growing from 3 trucks to 7 trucks, right? If you can, try to make sure, you want to make sure you always have reserves. You've got to keep reserves in the bank. Don't go squeezing yourself down to where you've got $2,000 in the bank just to acquire another truck. Try to use your existing trucks to fund the purchase of your next trucks if you can. You really don't want to be squeezing your bank account to nothing, using that as down payments to get a loan on these, and then going into 80, 90 grand worth of debt to pick up one truck and then another 60 grand for the next truck. So really try to be cognizant about how you grow as far as going into debt. The less debt, the better off you are, which I'm sure all of you know that already. So when it comes to the financials, just really make sure you have it dialed in, that you know what your cost is and you know where you need to operate at in order to be profitable. The other thing that we see people forget all the time is either yourself or your company, however you want to look at it, have to make money, right? So if your operating costs are $1.98 a mile, you can't operate at $2.05 a mile and think that you're going to do well. Just because your driver's paid and your vehicle maintenance is paid and your insurance is paid and everything's paid, doesn't mean that you're leaving yourself any meat on the bone. So make sure that you know from a business standpoint how much per mile above your operating costs you need to be operating. If that's 25 cents a mile, or if that's $1 a mile, or $1.25 a mile, you need to know exactly where you need to operate in order to be profitable. So that's the financials side of making sure you're ready to rock and roll in growing your trucking fleet. So let's go over to safety and compliance. Now, I should have said this in the beginning. These three things are all going to roll into one another in some facet or the other. So let's go into safety and compliance. Some really important things that you should do day one before you ever even start growing your fleet: making sure you have driver onboarding systems and procedures in place. You want to make sure that you have something that's documentable to bring on new drivers. Driver training is really important, making sure that they know how to do pre-trip inspections up to your standards. Just making sure that all your T's are crossed, I's are dotted, they're trained on the ELD devices you're using. They know how to properly log themselves for the right hours so they're not getting put out of service. You make sure that they understand how to make sure they're not overweight, whether you're using pre-installed air scales to weigh yourself before you take off from a shipment, or whether you're just pulling through scales. You need to make sure that your drivers know what your standards are. Even down to truck cleanliness. You want to make sure that these guys aren't destroying your trucks, that they know how to identify low tires, bad brakes, bad air brakes, all of these different things. You want to make sure you have a checklist in place for onboarding and pre-trip and everything else that you can when it comes to drivers. Same thing with your vehicles. You want to have a fleet maintenance program in place. At this many miles, this certain thing gets done. At this many miles, the next thing gets done. And you want to stick to them, right? If you build these programs and then don't do anything with them, they're as good as the paper they're written on or the file on your computer they're saved on, right? They do no good if they're not implemented in your day-to-day operations. So safety and compliance is huge. Making sure you have this in place is paramount to growing a fleet. And do it before you start to grow. By the time you find out that you needed it, it's too late. If you're not sure where to get started with safety and compliance and you'd like some help with that, we're going to link Synergy Solutions down below this video. John Stanley is the man over there. He is partnered with Strong Insurance. You do get a discounted rate with Synergy Solutions if you are a client of Strong Insurance. So if that's the route you're trying to grow and you want someone to kind of help you manage your safety and compliance, John Stanley is the man to do it. So now the last piece of the puzzle is obviously insurance. Now safety and compliance and insurance, or safety, compliance, and insurance go together, and they all circle back to profitability. So obviously, the more safe and compliant you are, the better these insurance rates get. So once you hit 2 years in business and you have a good out of service score and you have a good ISS score and you have a good CAB score and you haven't had a ton of claims, obviously these insurance rates get better, especially once you hit 2 years. Right now, we are seeing some really good rates for clean fleets that are over 2 years. We've seen rates as low as $9,000, $8,000 a truck for those that are crossing their T's, dotting their I's. So all of that circles back to financials, right? Now, you can obviously charge a little bit less or operate a little more profitably, either way you want to look at it, by having reduced insurance costs. And same thing with safety and compliance and implementing vehicle maintenance. Maintaining vehicles on the front end is always going to be more cost effective than fixing issues on the back end. So all of this kind of rolls back into your financials and making sure that all of these boxes are checked before you start to grow, and kind of everything else follows, right? Your being profitable will follow based on doing the other things on this checklist. So those are the 3 things that you really need to make sure that you have ready to rock and roll before you start hockey sticking into a larger fleet operation. If you want to learn anything more about the insurance or the compliance, feel free to reach out to any of our TRIP certified agents using the link below this video. If you want to continue to learn more about the trucking insurance industry and trucking industry as a whole, feel free to give us a like, follow, and subscribe, and keep it rubber side down.